What's up, everybody? It's Mac from MacTheMovieGuy.com, and I'm back today with, yes, you guessed it, another movie review. This time for Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza. I know I'm late to the party on this one. It definitely came out a few months ago in theaters, but I waited until the home video release rentals so that I could watch it with audio description and not be worried about whether or not my theater would have working audio description equipment, which is something we obviously frequently run into. Anyway, so Licorice Pizza stars Alana Hine and Cooper Hoffman as two young people in the early 1970s, sort of exploring Southern California. Alana plays Alana. Mind-blowing, I know. A young woman who is just sort of trying to find her own way in the world. She's 25, doesn't really have any major life accomplishments, and has caught the attention of 15-year-old Gary, played by Hoffman. And this film is just sort of their expeditions, their adventures, what they do, everything from selling waterbeds to things that teenagers actually do, like his continuing adventure of trying to get her to show him her boobs. And she realizes that she is, of course, 25, and he is 15, and she really should not be doing that. But that's the kind of movie Licorice Pizza is. This is the film that the Critics' Choice Awards gave Best Comedy to this year. It's Paul Thomas Anderson, so you know what you're going to get. With this film, you're going to get great dialogue. This film has... Even when I don't like Paul Thomas Anderson's stuff, there are things that I always love about his films. He manages to capture these terrific performances from his actors all the time. He writes them this amazing dialogue. He's one of the best dialogue writers in Hollywood, hands down. Regardless of whether or not I actually end up liking the finished product as much as some other people do, I always love the dialogue in his films, and I love the performances. I can never begrudge either of those. And that is exactly what Licorice Pizza does here, is the performances are so strong. Alana Hine, I knew nothing about her before Licorice Pizza, and now I'm just wondering what the next thing is that she'll be doing. I hope it's immediate. I hope it's soon. I don't know that I would have nominated her for an Oscar for this, just because of the type of performance that it is. It kind of feels a little too light compared to some of the other performances this year, especially some of the ones that they left off the list. But I think she's great. She got some breakthrough performance wins out there, and very deserved. But I also believe that, so much of the conversation has been focused on Alana Hine that they left behind Cooper Hoffman, who this is actually his first film, actually the first thing he's done. And he feels like he's been doing this forever. And the reason for that is this is Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid, and this is his son. And I think more attention should be given to just how good Cooper is. And how proud I think his father would be of him in this film. Philip worked with Paul Thomas Anderson in a couple of films, including Boogie Nights and The Master, and got some great performances in there as part of his career. And I think this was PTA's way of really just reconnecting with maybe a muse of his own. But Cooper does a really great job, and I really look forward to seeing more of what he does in the future. And speaking of Coopers that do a good job, Bradley Cooper in this film is phenomenal. He was, I thought, a little bit underrated this year in Nightmare Alley, a film that very few people were talking about the performances within the film. I thought he did a good job in that. It was kind of a safe performance. This is just Bradley Cooper being on fire. Just it's amazing. It's exactly the mix of perfect dialogue with the perfect actor. It's not a very long performance, but it's a very memorable performance. It's one that just pops out at you, considering all of the top-notch actors that drift through this film. You know, Sean Penn, Tom Waits, Christine Ebersol. There's just so many different actors in this film that are all really good. They're not necessarily the leads, but Bradley Cooper is the one that just kind of explodes when he reaches the screen in such a beautiful and brilliant way. So I loved Bradley Cooper's performance. What didn't I like about this film? The thing is that it's very sort of wandering, almost like we do through life. And I get it. I get what he was trying to do, I think. At least I think I do. Like, if I sat down with Paul Thomas Anderson, I feel like we'd have a good conversation about, did I understand what it is that you were trying to do? Did I get the purpose of this film? And we're just sort of exploring these kids. They're still youth, and at 25, you still kind of feel like a kid. You feel very much like there are still adults in the world, and you're not quite adulting yet. So I consider Alana's character to be still kind of a kid, just not quite the kid that Cooper is in this film. And because of that, we get a lot of scenes that are very different. And the film has a lot of rises and falls, and some scenes are funny and some scenes work, and some scenes have more of a dramatic push and some scenes have more of a comedic push. And they're all sort of strung together. And normally you get this type of film when it's over the course of one evening, but this isn't just a one evening film. It's more of a perpetual ongoing film. So that's where I think my disconnect comes in with this film, is just that I wasn't always in every scene. And in the scenes where I wasn't in, I was thinking about the runtime. I was like, did we need to be here? Does this movie need to be as long as it is? Going into this, I was a little unsure of whether or not the runtime needed to be what it was, considering what I kind of had been told the movie was to begin with. Felt like it was a little bit longer than it needed to be. I know Paul Thomas Anderson wants to keep everything in there. You know, he wrote it, he directed it, and he's the kind of director most people just don't say no to. So I can get that aspect of it. But at the same time, I did kind of feel not every scene connected to me. It's not that it's bad. It's fine. It's good. My favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie, honestly, I'm weird. It's Phantom Thread. I know that everyone is going to say, like, there will be blood. You know, actually, probably most people will say there will be blood. I'm just going to leave it at that. People are going to say there will be blood. But I actually really loved Phantom Thread. And that brings me to my next area where I get to talk about audio description, which is one of the things that I think we struggle with audio description in this community. As somebody who used to be able to see and now cannot, I can tell you that there are certain directors who have a very specific visual style, and there's a reason why they're hyped up, and there's so much that they bring to a film other than necessarily just being able to coherently tell a plot and a storyline with their actors. You know, and Paul Thomas Anderson is very much one of those people. He always has a great look in his film. It's very purposeful. It's just, it's his own style. He's very much like a Christopher Nolan, Wes Anderson type that has developed their own very particular type of directing, their very own particular style, where if you could see and you walked into a theater and you didn't know he was directing a film, you would be able to tell. You'd be able to tell that this was a Paul Thomas Anderson film. I believe that. I wasn't able to see it, but I believe, having still, Phantom Thread was one of the last films I was able to see as a visual person, and I believe that through that, that I still remember what he brings to the table, and he is a very purposeful director when it comes to the visual aspects of this film and the craft. And I know that that's a really hard thing to grasp and to throw into audio description, and I feel like I'm asking for a lot, an insurmountable task. But I think that is sort of encapsulating the movie-going experience for some of these directors. You know, the blind community doesn't quite understand the hype behind some films or some directors when it's very heavily stylized, and none of that ends up translating into the audio description. I'm not really sure how it would translate into audio description. I have to keep thinking about how you would do that, except to talk about specific camera angles and shots. I feel like the audio description in Licorice Pizza was very sort of hands-off. Often it would introduce a scene and kind of let the scene roll, and then it would come back to us later. We didn't get constant updates. There were things that I could feel that were happening on the screen that were not being audio described. There was sort of a little bit of a kerfuffle, I'll say, in like Act 1, where some people were either full-on fighting or pushing and shoving. Couldn't really tell. It wasn't audio described. We just got a little bit before and then a little bit after, and it was just stuff like that. There was audio description. I'm not gonna say there wasn't, but it could have been better. It felt sort of like the bare minimum needed to get by in many ways for this film. So that's my thoughts on Licorice Pizza. Not my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film, but a good one. I'm not sure I would have nominated it for Best Picture, but then again, I've seen far more films that were not even nominated this year that should be up there, like Mass. So I'm looking for films to take out of the top 10 so I can put some other films that I really loved into the top 10. This is my 9th Best Picture title that I've seen. Unfortunately, Drive My Car does not have English audio description, so I will not be able to complete the bucket list of Best Picture Oscar nominees this year, which upsets me. Thank you, HBO Max, for not adding English audio description to Drive My Car. And I'm now tapped out at seeing 9 of the 10 Best Picture nominees. So this is not the one that I think is going to win. It's not one that I would have nominated for Best Picture. I do think it has a very well-deserved screenplay nomination. I think the dialogue in this is fantastic. I think the overall concept and just living and breathing in this time period works very well. And I think that Anderson got a great performance out of 2 leads and swung for the fences and picked 2 people we don't know very well. And they carry the film the same way any 2 A-list actors would have carried this film, perhaps even better. So there's a lot to like here. It's just not my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie, but it's definitely not a bad film. I'm going to go ahead and give Licorice Pizza a B. So that's it. That's my Licorice Pizza review. I'm glad I'm not actually eating something called licorice pizza. That sounds terrible. I did love the throwbacks to all the waterbed references. I remember when my friends had a waterbed growing up, and that took me back. But to the existence, because I feel like nobody has waterbeds anymore, unless it's a waterbed that's been sitting in somebody's house since since this time period. So, yeah, it was, there's a lot of cool things here. Anyway, so what's your favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie? Is it There Will Be Blood, or are you an interesting person and is it something less predictable? I would love for somebody to comment and be like, my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie is Hard Eight. And I'd be like, you've been there since the beginning. Go you. That's like his Reservoir Dogs. That is the original Paul Thomas Anderson, you know? So if your favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie is Hard Eight, please let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can check out more of what I do at macthemovieguy.com. Plus, I want to give a special shout out to the Audio Description Project. For all of your needs, if you want to head over to Audio Description Project, you can look up a bunch of titles and find out whether or not they have audio description. They list them by streaming service. So if you have Hulu and you want to see what movies on there are audio described because you want to find something to watch that night, that is what the Audio Description Project does. So feel free to head over to Audio Description Project and find a movie to watch tonight, or watch Licorice Pizza. I watched it through Apple VOD, so it's not on Hulu, but it's totally up to you. That's it, and have a good day until I see you again.